But I kind of want to play a game with you guys now. Talk a little buy and sell. Now, I'm not only going to talk teams, I'm going to talk a couple scenarios, see what you guys think. But let me know if you're going to buy or sell. So let's start off. Are the Red Sox going to be buyers or sellers?
I think this is a team that more or less will stand pat. I think they're definitely not going to sell because this is a team that wants to be competing sooner than later. I think that this is a group that if they get hot, maybe they go out and buy, but they're definitely not going to sell.
Yeah, you said buy or sell, and I immediately thought neither. Especially with the Bregman injury, I just don't see them really putting all their cards on the table and going all in. But with the way that the AL is and the AL East not super competitive, I definitely see them just trying to tread water while Bregman's hurt and then make a late year push for the postseason. Maybe you bring in a bat for a cheap price if you can, but they feel like more a team that could go after a vet that's in free agency if they wanted an option like that, or an expiring contract for a very that they're just taking the money off the books for a team, not any big swings.
There have been talks, though, of Wilyer Abreu and Jarren Duran getting moved. So that I do want to take into consideration. I've seen some crazy stuff online where
What
the Red
is
Sox think they'll
the return?
So one of the crazier things I've seen is fans of the Red Sox want to trade Duran to the Padres, but they say unless it's a massive overpay, and I'm talking Leo DeVry or Ethan Salas, that it's not even worth entertaining. Now, I think that's ridiculously stupid because that's not even an overpay. That's just on another level. But Duran might not have, a future with Boston. He's not playing like he was last year. He's only had that one really good season. It seems like fans are ready to run him out of town and get whatever they can out of him.
Well, what Boston should do is just call up Roman Anthony.
Yeah, but that makes too much sense.
See, but that's the thing, though. You can't sit there and say that you want an over. You're only going to get rid of a guy for an overpay, but then you're just trying to get anything for him. So I think that right now, Boston as a franchise, not the fan base, just as a franchise, this group is looking at what's on the field. Duran gives them currently the best chance to win in center field. They saw what happened last year mid-season with other teams getting hot. The American League is open. There are not a line of juggernauts just waiting. They're sitting there that you have to jump. These are definitely teams that the Red Sox can beat and, can jump. They just have to go on a run and get out of this 500 lull that they're in, where they get to 500 and then fall back down. Like, they need to get above 500, stay above 500, and then this team's going to go add. They're definitely not going to sell.
Next team up is going to be the Angels. Do they buy or do they sell?
Sell. You're the worst team in your division in Oakland. The Athletics, not Oakland. They are in this division. The Angels had hot starts out of a bunch of guys that really just aren't that good. They were able to do well for the first 3 weeks of the season. I think this is an abysmal team. They need to just completely tear it down. Anybody who has less than 4 years of team control should be available.
What will they do, or what should they do? What will they do? Probably nothing. What should they do for about the third year in a row? Sell. We'll see.
Next up will the Giants make the playoffs? Are you buying the Giants as a playoff team right now as we're in early June?
No. This is not a playoff team strictly because of how good the National League is. The National League East will have 2 playoff teams.
Only 2?
At least 2. The Braves, I'm still not ready to write them off yet. I think that the Nationals are sneaky. If they can go on a run, I think that they're in a similar boat as Boston. but set up better for the future. So they're not going to go and overhaul trying to win now. But, the Giants, they're what? I think the third best team in their division behind the Dodgers and Padres. The Diamondbacks are a tough team. The NL Central could end up putting in 2 teams this year. You really just can't bank on the Giants this year. I don't think that they have a deep enough pitching staff. I don't think that they did enough lineup wise. The vibes are fun. They're a fun team, that's for sure. I just don't see them as a playoff team.
I'm gonna buy. I think with the Corbin Burns injury, Arizona probably starts to feel like a fourth team for sure there. And listen, the Giants have been pretty solid this year against teams with a winning record. All their wins aren't just coming off of poor competition. As well, they have the fourth best plus minus in the NL at plus 41. Better than the Padres, better than the Cardinals, better than the Reds, even better than the Phillies. So I believe that this Giants team will get in. I think they're likely the 6th or 7th seed, but I think that they do get in. I think it'll be between them and the Brewers.
Look at
I agree
Dylan
with
adding an
Dylan.
extra team.
But I agree with Dylan.
The 5th or 6th team.
But I agree with Dylan though. I think you're crazy if you don't even entertain the idea that they make the playoffs. Like
What, you buy
just to
their
count them out completely. Like you can't just count them out completely because I mean they have been playing well this season, and they probably will be buyers and stuff. And like Dylan said, they are getting wins off of good teams. So to like count them out completely, like right now saying that they're not a playoff team at all, I think it's way too early to do that.
Yeah, I think the exercise for me is Mets, Phillies in, Cubs in, Dodgers in. Those 4 feel like pure locks. I would say the Padres will be in. I said it at the beginning of the season, but the Giants are right there with them. Those 2 spots are going to be Padres, Giants, Brewers, Cardinals, Reds, and Braves. And the Reds feel like to me in that situation.
Hunter
But
Green supremacy.
Yeah, they have a losing record. He can't play every game. So I'm buying that the Giants stay winning, and I think that they'll be buyers as well at the trade deadline.
Hey, let's not ignore the Cardinals either, though. St. Louis currently has a better record than the Giants with one less loss. So
I think it's possible they're sellers, even though they're winning.
Hey, and that's because of how deep the National League is. That's where it's not a knock on the Giants. There is a lot of competition. And when you look at competition, who has the hardest in-division games? It's the Giants. Because the Giants have to play the Padres. They have to play the Dodgers. Whereas Milwaukee, they can beat up on the Pirates. The Reds, yeah, okay, they've been solid hanging around this year as well. They're still below 500. They're not a team that's ready. I don't care that Terry Francona's there. It's going to take another year. But, there's just a lot more winnable games for the Brewers and Cardinals. I think that the NL Central is a bit better than we gave them credit for this year. And I just think the Cubs, they're rolling with the division. Milwaukee, though, they're still going to find a way in. Milwaukee always finds a way in.
No, that's fair. And I think that, both of those teams will be battling until the end of the year.
Well, let's look at Milwaukee, though. Are they going to be buyers or sellers?
I don't see them doing either. Again, I think this is a team that just rolls with what they have.
See, I could see Milwaukee buying this year strictly because the window is closing, right? Like of their ability to compete. I think that they know that they need pitching. I think they go out and they get some pitching. They're going to get expiring contracts, add some guys to the lineup. You're having anything out of Kristen Yelich at this point needs to be taken advantage of. And I think that's where the Brewers go out and buy because, you have some of these older guys on your roster that you didn't win with. You want to go out and try to get something out of it. And I just think that the Brewers, it's a sneaky team. You never really know what they're going to do because of that and the way they operate, but they definitely do not sell.
Now, what about the Rays? How do we feel about the Rays? Because they're in third place in the East, but they've been in second for a lot of the season, and they're kind of treading water under the radar.
Sell, sell, sell. This team is going to sell. They know they're not winning a World Series this year. They are playing in the Yankees spring training facility. This is sell written all over it. Could you imagine George
I think
Steinbrenner Field hosting a playoff game? Like, would they even allow that?
I think the Rays could potentially be 40-10, and I wouldn't be confident that they'd buy at this point in time. They just don't buy. All they do is sell, get prospects, make them good, and then don't pay them. So I there's nothing that you could ever do to convince me that the Rays will buy. And if they're borderline playoffs, they're probably selling.
Now, how about this? We spoke about a couple teams that are good. One of your locks, Dylan, was the Cubs. They have a guy in Pete Crow Armstrong who is making an MVP case. Do we think that'll be the case at the end of the year? Will he be top 3 in the MVP voting?
No.
Oh, top
I
3.
I
I'm
find
not
it hard
saying he's
to
going to win
see.
it.
See, I just feel like for his position and what he provides, it's very difficult to win MVP and get that kind of recognition. I think that you have two guys on the Mets in Lindor and Alonso who will end up getting more votes than him. I think that obviously Ohtani is going to get more votes than him. It's just tough because he has been the battery for the Chicago Cubs team. He's the Energizer Bunny who has kind of brought everything together, it feels like, this year. I find it hard to see a guy winning MVP in today's MLB hitting less than 30 home runs, and that's where he'll ultimately be.
I mean, I
So,
don't
for
hear any
reference,
bias at all in Ben's statement. No bias at all.
Look,
For-
hey,
for reference,
whatever. I don't hold anything that Brody Van Wagenen did against anybody like Jared Kelenic or, Pete Crow Armstrong. Hey, the Mets would be in great shape if they had Pete Crow Armstrong still, rather than half a season of mediocre Javi Baez. But look, that's just not how the cookie crumbled.
So here's what I'll say, because when you asked the question, my initial reaction was no, and then I thought, who's up for the award? Ohtani is obviously minus 260 right now. Fernando Tatis Jr. is plus 1100. Then it's Pete Crow Armstrong at also plus 1100. Corbin Carroll plus 1600. Kyle Tucker plus 1600. Freeman plus 2500. Lindor Alonso plus 4000. Soto plus 5000. My thought here was, if you asked me would he win it, my answer is no shot. Top 3, I think he's going to be.
Definitely makes it more of an interesting question.
I think he's going to be competing with Kyle Tucker. I think that if Tucker can get some pop going this summer, he'll catch and pass PCA. And I do think that conventionally in our minds, Tucker is already just the best player on the team. So it'll be easy to do that. So I'm going to say he finishes top 4, but not top 3.
So let's now go to the Diamondbacks. We've brought them up a few times. Are they going to be buyers or sellers? And then on a side note, will Corbin Carroll have a 40-40 season?
I don't think he gets there with the home runs. He 40 home runs for Corbin Carroll this year. I'm not saying it's impossible.
Has 17 right now.
I just don't think he gets there. I just not a believer in him getting up there. You see a lot of guys start off hot and then they'll go through a month and hit like 2.
But what about the Diamondbacks as a team, though? Buy or sell too?
Diamondbacks,
I'm going to say sell.
Yeah. Well, see, I don't know, though, because this is a team that barely missed the playoffs without Corbin Burns last year. and really a Mets second half surge away from getting into the playoffs. And who knows? This is a group that has gone into the postseason and done damage recently. So, like, I don't think that they're going to be gung-ho on selling, especially you saw how frustrated ownership was after the Jordan Montgomery contract.
Well, here's why I'll say sell, because I do think they have multiple contracts that are expiring that teams would be interested in. Zach Gallen, Josh Naylor, Randall Grichuk, AJ Puck, Geraldo Perdomo, Pavin Smith, Reen Nelson, Brandon Pfaadt, Gabriel Moreno, Alec Thomas, all 1 year left on their contract. If they don't have a productive June, they might make multiple deals to move some of those bats to AL teams. And if there's an injury to a starting pitcher on any team, Zach Gallen expiring deal, you could at least take the shot. I know he hasn't been excellent this year, but
it's
a guy who's been good.
The Diamondbacks, you have to try to lock him up. I think you don't trade him with hopes of re-signing him. I think he's someone who's
there's certainly names on that list that I don't think they move everybody by any means.
The only one who I would really push for.
Merrill Kelly also only has 2 years left on the deal. So, and I misspoke with Pfaadt. He has I think
Pfaadt has some.
I guess I didn't misspeak. Spot Rack misspoke because they have him on here twice. Once as a 1 year deal and once as a 5 year deal. So unless there's two Brandon Pfaadts on the Diamondbacks, that's their bad, not mine.
Well, he's only had 2 years prior to this, right? Yeah. So, like, he has tons of team control left.
Yeah, I think it's way more likely we see a Naylor, Pavin Smith, Moreno potentially get moved rather than a pitcher. And maybe, again, a Merrill Kelly with 2 years left could be a guy.
Yeah, guys like Gallen and even Perdomo, I think they're going to look to more.
I think they want to keep Perdomo as well. They have so many expiring contracts that it wouldn't surprise me if some got moved.
So how about the Braves? I wrote them off as dead early on. They're still hovering around, barely with a pulse, but they could still make a run. They have the talent. Acuna's back. What do we think about the Braves?
I think the Braves are, another one of those teams that's just going to keep on keeping on. There's no way they sell. I mean, they don't really have too many expiring contracts to my knowledge. And if they do, it's not anybody that I think anybody's going to pay a ton to get. I don't think that this is a big sell-off, but look, if you're Atlanta and you have a bad year this year, okay, that's fine. But next year is really telling with how they have everybody locked up. That'll tell you if they're going to really start moving off of pieces. I think this year it's still way too early, and they're banged up. They've had to deal with injuries, so it's just one of those situations where I don't know if anybody who is able to be moved is worth trading for. Honestly, I mean they just cut. I believe it was Orlando Arcia.
Yeah.
Like they just straight up caught him. So
yeah,
like they didn't even bury him.
I don't see the Braves selling. I also don't see them buying. I think that the front office and team is just kind of going to say, hey, we have enough talent that if we can get right, get healthy, we can maybe do what the Mets did last year, make a push, get in, and who knows, from a wild card spot, get to a World Series because they do have that level ceiling. I worry that they're too far behind the 8 ball and just the injury bug is it's still there for this team and it's just going to be a problem in a brutal NL. But I think that they kind of just ride this one out.
How about the O's? I know they're not having a great year, but are they really going to be sellers or do they look to maybe make some moves for guys with longer term contracts in hopes of having them not just for this year, but for next year when they expect to be better? A guy, like you said, Merrill Kelly.
I think maybe both.
This is sell.
Who are they going to sell?
Cedric Mullins.
Well, so I think that
Welcome to New York.
But I think that they're both. I think that they sell a guy like Cedric Mullins for a guy that they believe can help them compete next year. So in that sense, they're also buying talent. That's why I think it's but they're not selling for a prospect that's 18, 19 years old and going to play in 5 years. Like, I think they're selling for next season.
No,
so
I think
they're buying.
They look at a team like the Mets, and I'm not saying that the Mets would do this, but you look at a team with pitching depth and you get one of their young starters like a Tyler McGill or, maybe a
Right.
David Peterson. Someone like that. Peterson, not so much, but, McGill still has a few years of team control. You can use that. These are things that the Orioles will look for, whereas, you're not getting a complete major league ready player in Tyler McGill, but you're getting a promising young pitcher to add to the staff. Something along those lines is what they're going to look for. They're not looking for prospects, especially with how much homegrown talent they have. They need veterans or younger guys who are a little bit more broken in. So that way, they could gel with the rest of this group, because they're not going to be selling off the young pieces. They have some expiring contracts. Ryan O'Hearn, 100% someone is going to call about him. And I think you can get a solid haul back for him.
I think it's possible Mountcastle gets calls as well. Obviously, they're going to keep the core together. Henderson, Holiday, Rutschman, like none of those guys are going anywhere. But I do think it's possible to see some of the more veteran bats in this lineup go for guys that they believe could be in the starting rotation next season.
Now, how about the Rangers? They're a team that's, not playing well. They have that one World Series win, but they're not a young team. Their future isn't very promising with the age of a lot of their, stars. Could this be a team that actually decides to sell high and get good value before some of their aging players really fall off a cliff and don't get the return that they could get?
I think they're buying. I think they're buying for one more year. I think
This
with
is a
how
team
open the
that's-
AL is open, they have to.
They've been all in now for a while. And I mean, when you look at what the Rangers have been able to do pitching wise this year, when you have a DeGrom and you have a Molly and you have Eovaldi pitching as well as they have been, how can you not try, right? Because if you think about the Texas Rangers and you say, hey, you have 3 starting pitchers whose ERAs are sub 2.5 or sub 3, like, you have to run with that. I mean, these guys have been very good for them this year. Go out, get a bat, grab some bullpen arms, and then, you're talking, especially with how the American League West is this year, right? Like, it's not like the Rangers are sitting there in a very difficult slog. They're 4 games back? This is by no means insurmountable. The Mariners are not a team I trust to hold that division, especially because they can't hit either outside of Cal Raleigh.
Yeah, can you, we just talked about the Orioles. Can you get a haul for Jack Leiter and bring in multiple bats? Can you bring in a Ryan O'Hearn and a Ryan Mountcastle, get an outfielder and a first baseman, 2 strong bats for the lineup for a pitcher for the future? Can you convince Baltimore on something on that level? Because it's not just because I have a bet on them to win the AL West. It's certainly not that I want them to be buyers. But their team is veteran-led, and while Simeon is not having a strong year, Corey Seager's having a good year. Eovaldi's been, great. DeGrom's been very solid. Like, the strength of your team, those players are old. And in a wide-open AL, you're doing a disservice to them by not going all in. If it doesn't work out and it blows up, you'd also rather an off season to really field offers if you're going to hit a massive reset button if you're the Rangers, because that involves moving a massive Seager contract, potentially moving Simeon's big contract. Like, there's a lot that goes into that.
I want to thank you guys for
I'll
dashing
tell you
my
right now, Simeon say Simeon and Seager are not going anywhere with those contracts. So, like, I will just tell you that right now. But DeGrom is an interesting case because he's now a few years in. He's having a very good bounce back year, and he's only going to have 2 years left on this contract after this year at $37 million. That's something that some teams might be able to swallow if the Rangers decide they're going to move off of someone, because you can get a decent haul back for him. And I think, another team, they may not have a problem eating the money, especially if Texas can absorb some of it.
Imagine the San Francisco Giants with a DeGrom Verlander 1-2 punch in the postseason. They would have been lethal in 2018.
Those shirts are in there.
Why not?
But the next thing I do want to talk about is Cal Raleigh. He was brought up as the only bat on the Mariners. And I want to ask if you guys buy or sell him breaking Salvador Perez's catcher single season home run record of 48 home runs. Will he break the record?
Look, I want to buy. I want to buy just because it's a fun thing to talk about. Look, this is a guy who might lead the entire major leagues in home runs, and in a Major League Baseball era that has Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani and Pete Alonso, you're gonna have to break 50
What's a
home
polar
runs.
bear doing there? What's a polar bear doing in Texas?
Had to throw a polar bear in there. Had to throw a polar bear. But look, in all seriousness, there are a lot of guys in Major League Baseball that can hit a lot of home runs. So, yeah, I think if Cal Raleigh leads the league in home runs, he's certainly going to smash Salvador Perez's catcher single-season home run record. He's well on pace to do it. And I don't know. I'm a fan of the big dumper. I'm going to say yes. I'm buying it.
But do you actually believe he's going to lead the league in home runs?
I said I believe he can.
But do you believe he will?
I don't believe he will. No. Because unlike other positions, catcher's one that's so strenuous that you can go into a heavy slump. Like, eventually you're going to. The reason why Salvi was able to get to 48 was because he still hit home runs even when he wasn't hitting well.
As a Yankees fan who today saw an early MVP season poll that had Aaron Judge 1 vote shy of a unanimous MVP, and that 1 vote was for Cal Raleigh, I'm going to say sell. Unbiased.